Great. Thank you, Fraser. Appreciate that intro and all that GLIO does. Scott, great to see you and appreciate you taking time with both myself and all the investors here. So thank you.
Thank you.
So Scott, it'd be great to just get a quick intro of WEC Energy and your businesses and what is the investment proposition that you are targeting for your shareholders.
Sure. So we're located in the upper Midwest. We serve 4 states. Wisconsin is our largest state, which is, a lot of people look back at Wisconsin and the regulatory compact has been very constructional and very constructive over the years. That's about a little over 60% of our assets now. We also have gas distribution in Illinois, Minnesota, and Michigan. In Wisconsin, we're both gas and electric. And in addition to that, we have a 10% interest in American Transmission Company, and that's about 10% of our asset base. And then we also have an investment, we call it WEC Infrastructure, that invests in long-term renewable assets with off-takers, long-term off-takers with great credit ratings. So when we look at it and put it all together with our capital plan, we see a long-term growth rate of 6.5% to 7%, and currently our dividend yield is about 4%. So the proposition is about a double-digit return.
Double digits, and I assume also with pretty good, visibility and risk controls as well.
Yeah, it's a great visibility. Our capital plan, I've never seen it really longer or stronger. So when you look at our capital plan and you look out, and when we forecast it, we don't put any white space in our capital plan. We look long-term of what's out there, and it's a very executable capital plan. So I see it as being a very low-risk, executable capital plan that will allow us to earn those type of returns.
Sounds very compelling, Scott. So just, WEC has had a long track record of success. And the obvious question investors are always looking to, what are you going to do for me lately? And so what are you doing to keep up this track record in the future? And when you look at WEC versus peer companies, what do you see as differentiators for WEC versus those peers?
Yeah, that's a good question. And when you think about it, we're the fabric of the community and the fabric of the economy going here. So we want to keep to the basics, right? We care about customer satisfaction, having reliability, and we keep financial focus. So what we want to do is make sure we deliver what we deliver energy under the arc, affordable, reliable, and clean. I think one of the things that differentiate us is when we look at our capital plan, it's extremely executable. We got a $23.7 million capital plan, no big bets. We've done all the type of projects before. It's just undergrounding, doing some simple basics, putting in some generation, stuff that we've all done before. So very excited about our capital plan and very excited that it's very executable. But we really are going to stick to the fundamentals here.
No, that sounds great. And so one of the things that's been exciting this year in the utility space and really broader power space too is a focus on an inflection in demand growth. With the big area of focus being data centers is kind of the exciting new shiny toy for the utility business. So maybe you could talk to your WEC's position and the service area related to data center growth, and what are you doing to kind of capitalize on this and some of the opportunities for WEC and your shareholders from an inflection in growth.
And when you look at the growth, you're exactly right. I look back and, right now, if you go back to, the 50s and 60s, you were seeing this type of growth. And what we have projected our forecast is 4.5 to 5% growth starting in 2026. So that's a huge growth of sales that we haven't seen in the past. And I'm excited not just for the data center growth, but the entire region. When you look at our region, You know, you don't have the earthquakes, you don't have the hurricanes. When you look at the FEMA maps and look at wildfire risk, we don't have the wildfire risk that other areas have. So it's really a low risk environment as people look and build and develop their businesses here. So, you know, that's very exciting. And of course, we got great infrastructure, electric and gas infrastructure. We're located, you know, we're in the middle in the U.S. here. We're located near a couple of airports, great educational systems around us. So a lot of opportunities for people to come here and thrive. So we're excited about that. And we're seeing that good growth, not only on the electric side, but we're also in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota seeing about a 1% gas growth, which is really driven by the economic development as new houses come in. So all of that is allowing us to even grow our business stronger. I mean, you know, we're doing capital investments for that core infrastructure, even adding more ourselves an American Transmission Company with great robustness, plus providing the generation. So it's an exciting time here, but it also fuels our growth. When you think about people coming to the region, and Microsoft has announced a large project. They announced a project that they're going to spend $3.3 billion in the years 2024 to 2026. That's exciting, but in addition to that, they're going to, you know, it's going to cause about 2,300 construction jobs, provide construction jobs, and about 2,000 permanent jobs. And you think about all those people going to restaurants, using those secondary services for us, building housing, apartments. It's pretty exciting, the growth we're seeing, specifically in southeastern Wisconsin.
And so I think there's a little bit of concern about, are there any risks coming with growth? I guess maybe some of the bigger risks being just, can you keep up with it? And just, is it going to end up being costly to build all the infrastructure? How are you feeling about managing any risks that come with it?
And we do a long-term forecasting. So we have actually several years ago started the process of pre-ordering the common parts, looking ahead, trying to get those orders multiple years out. And we've been working with our largest customers before they made announcements to get stuff in the supply chain, to get stuff ordered, to make sure we're ready for the growth in the build. Because as you know, supply chain's been pretty tough the last several years. But we've been ahead of that curve. It hasn't affected us too much.
That's great. So obviously the data center and other growth are probably key parts of your capital plan, but maybe you could talk to a little bit more, Scott, about some of the other key capital programs that are driving WEC's earnings growth. And then, of course, the obvious question of how you plan to fund that capital.
We're at the process now of really reviewing our generation portfolio, right? We have the greenhouse gas rules that we need to be in compliance with. So we have a capital plan that is $7 billion of renewables over the next 5 years. That'll help us provide, carbon-free energy, doesn't have the fuel costs along with it. We get production tax credits from the government that'll help on affordability. Plus, that allows us, as we go through, to shut down some coal plants. In fact, today, the 31st of May, we are actually closing 2 of the units at our Old Earl Creek site. And that gives us the ability to reduce some O&M costs, and you don't have that fuel cost. So a big growth in renewables. We're putting in dispatchable gas generation. So gas generation, so when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, we can make sure we keep the reliability. It's one of our core principles, make sure we keep the lights on, so it's dispatchable there. So that's a good investment. We also are doing a lot of storm hardening. Over the last 5-6 years, we've seen bigger storms come through, a lot more customer outages because of that. So we're doing some undergrounding. We're doing just a lot more work to storm harden the system. And another area of tremendous growth for us is our investment in American Transmission Company. Transmission has been building strong as it puts renewables on the system. They're hardening their system. They're also driven by economic development. And the mid-continental operator MISO is looking at, Tranche 1, and that's started, and now they're coming out with Tranche 2, to be larger transmission growth in the area. So really excited about having multiple facets of growth in our capital plan, not just a one flavor.
Let's talk about regulatory. So regulatory, I think Wisconsin historically been consistently viewed as an above average regulatory state. How are you feeling about it now? I know there's been some recent changes in the commissioners, got a little noisier a few years ago, but just how are you feeling about the Wisconsin environment today?
And a good question. And quite frankly, it was a little noisier a couple of years ago during our rate case. But when you look past the noise and some of the discussions on the record, the fundamentals of what we were seeing in the rate case was fair and allowed us to execute a solid plan. When I look at some of the changes at the commission, I look at our commission and I really see it as being really well-rounded and understands the fundamentals of the business. The chair of the Wisconsin Commission, Summer Strand, has worked in both the private and public sector, really has an understanding of both, has sat across the table at the rating agencies in different facets of her past career, so she understands the importance of the balance sheet and credit quality. I think that's critical. Another individual that was just appointed, Christine Nieto, she really has a deep understanding of the commission. She's been there for 10 years, understands the process. And I like it, the fact that she was part of the consumers division, so she understands the consumer issues, but also she was a part of the regulatory part as it looks at the revenue requirements. So she has a nice balance of the commission. And then the last person that was appointed, Marcus Hawkins, he has a great interface. He was a director that interfaced with MISO from the organizations that support all the commissions. So I think under his understanding of the MISO market and the need for reliability and renewable generation versus dispatchable generation, I think that's a nice piece to add to the commission. So I think our Wisconsin Commission is extremely well-rounded. Now, they're new in the spot, so it's as always, we'll see how their first cases go. But so far, I'm very pleased at what I see in their ability. There's no doubt they have the ability to continue to make this a constructive environment.
And I guess you have a new rate case you filed recently that should be decided by the end of this year.
Correct. We filed a rate case for rates effective at the beginning of 2025 and 2026, really implementing the capital plan we've been talking about, doing storm hardening, putting in some of the generation we put in, and just continuing to implement just a really dignified capital spending, some reliability spending. So it's for reliability, economic development, and to be in compliance with those environmental programs we talked about in the greenhouse gases. And we're very proud of our capital plan lays out that at this point we don't see any need for carbon capture on our sites. We're able to be in compliance, which we think is the most efficient for our customers.
No, that's great. And then just briefly on Illinois, I know you got an order just the other day on the Illinois, I guess, emergency work. Just it's been a bit more challenging there. Just any thoughts and color on the Illinois environment for you and the context of what percent, roughly or overall the business Illinois represents?
Sure. In Illinois right now, there's about 16% of the business when you look at asset base. And when you look at our 5-year plan, we really looked at, because you said there's some noise down in Illinois, we actually moved some capital dollars to other parts of the business. And in 5 years, the Illinois segment's going to be about 12%. So we're really de-risking in Illinois. You're correct. We did see an order yesterday. We looked at for emergency work. And we had some work in there that, we think is more emergency, and we continue to do some projects. The ICC and the commission wanted to really just keep it to emergency work. So they gave us a rate base of about $29 million and about $1.6 million of revenue requirement on our rehearing. We're a little disappointed. We thought there'd be a little bit more. I think they want to evaluate all of that in the S&P program because they're considering that was a safety modernization program, and they want to evaluate that this fall and the beginning of next year. So we'll know more about that then. Now, when you think about it, and we've talked before, we probably have in future years maybe $100 million of that emergency work, and some of that we'll definitely have to do, and we'll evaluate the other work as we go forward, and we'll update that in our 5-year plan coming this fall. But you know, you think about last year, we pivoted about 800 million out of Illinois. So if there's 500 million, we have to find something that would refresh our capital plan. I'm sure there's going to be other opportunities in other parts of our business.
Got it. That's great. Well, Scott, I want to thank you for your time, and thank on behalf of the investors, thank you. And love to give you the floor back to wrap up, and any messages you'd like to leave folks before we end our discussion.
Well, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for taking time to ask me questions for the investors, and I appreciate the opportunity here. When I look at the WEC capital plan, I think it's about as long as strong as I've ever seen, and it's very executable on projects we've done before. And the key for me is it's not just capital projects, but it's also driven by economic development, which is great to see in the region, that is driven by sales increases. So when you put that all together, you know, we're growing long-term 6.5% to 7%. We have a great dividend that pays out about 4%, so total return that's double digit. And we're continuing to clean the environment in a very efficient way. I mentioned we closed 2 coal plants, about 2 units today, and you know, we'll be out of coal by the end of 2032, and coal is only a backup by 2030. So I think we've got a strong plan, executing on the fundamentals with a good return and cleaning for the environment. So really excited about the future of the company, not just for this 5 years, but the 5 years and 10 years after that.
Great. Thank you again, Scott.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.